Yo guys, Vision SGN here, bringing you the best loadouts to be using right now in Warzone Verdansk. In this video, I will identify the best and meta weapons to be using as of right now, following the latest update, which will consist of the newest ARs, the Kilo, the Grau, the Amax, as well as the HDR Sniper, and the existing submachine guns from the BO6 game, which is the C9, the Saug, and the KSV, and a handful of other weapons which I'll mention that are also meta, such as the AK-74. Now, on that note, let's get right into it. So, following the re-release of Verdansk, I'm sure you will all agree with me that this has been a massive success. There are, of course, still issues that will be addressed, and hopefully that doesn't take too long, such as the inconsistent TTK, the floor loot being pretty poor for the most part in the fact that money is non-existent, plates are hard to get, and so on. And just all round, there seems to be minor issues, nothing massive, and I wouldn't say it's massively going to hinder the opinion of others on the likes of Verdansk in itself, but the map feels great. It feels like everything it used to. It's bigger than I remember. I don't remember it being this big, and some areas are just quite laborious and long-winded to explore, such as farmland and quarry and so on. I just don't quite remember it the way it was, but all round, I have had a great intro back into this, and I've really enjoyed every minute of it, especially using all of the new weapons. Now, for the most part, because they are battle pass driven, in the fact that the meta weapons are the Kilo, the Amax, and so on, and you have to grind the battle pass in order to earn them, it has been a bit stagnant in the sense that I have had to try and find guns off the floor because I haven't yet done the battle pass, and I'm sure that's the same for many of you guys. But in this video, I will explain exactly how to use all of the weapons, what they're best suited for, which weapons and attachments you want to be using, and so on. So on that note, let's begin with the ARs in this game, which are the Kilo, the Amax, and the Grau, and they are the absolute meta weapons in this game, the newly re-released weapons. And let's start with the Kilo. So on the Kilo, this weapon is an extremely reliable and dominant weapon right now in Warzone, which provides you great versatility from close to long range, has a pretty fast time to kill, very accurate, and also easy to use, which is really important. And it's also, you can use it straight off the break. You don't have to level up the season pass or the battle pass, as it's referred to, which is really good and helpful for all new players returning to the game. Now, as for the attachments, you will want to use the following. In my opinion, the sight is always a preference, but considering this map is such a long range map, you will definitely want to consider more of a 3 times and so on scope on your AR or your primary weapon. So for the Kilo, we're going to use the Willis 3 times, as that's my personal favorite and that's my preference. And then as for the second attachment, we will be using the monolithic suppressor, the newly added attachment that is a re-release from the pass card. Now, unfortunately, this attachment is a battle pass attachment, which you have to unlock at battle pass page 6. So unfortunately, unless you have that, I would then suggest either using a normal suppressor or the likes of a compensator, either the ported or the initial compensator. Both are helpful for the vertical recoil control. The ported is going to give you slightly more vertical and kick fire recoil control, whereas the normal compensator is going to give you just better vertical all round. However, once you unlock the monolithic suppressor, this will provide you with better velocity and damage range, so you'll want to be using this. Now, as for the third attachment, you'll want to be using the reinforced barrel, as it adds more velocity than the long barrel, as that doesn't provide any. Of course, it provides you with more damage range, but the collective damage range and velocity with the reinforced barrel is providing you with a more consistent TTK and is better all around. Now, as for the fourth attachment, this is a pretty much standard for all of the weapons unless you're going for a faster build. You'll want to be using a vertical grip, which provides you with horizontal recoil control. However, if you do want better idle sway and you've noticed that is a problem, then maybe you want to consider the precision foregrip or the Ranger for the better movement speed and recoil stabilization that it provides. Now, as for the fifth attachment, this is always a preference. Some people use the extended mag 2, however, you lose a lot of ADS and sprint to fire, so it's going to feel a lot heavier and then makes you a lot slower than the extended mag 1. And in my opinion, I would just use the extended mag 1. But if you feel that you are running out of ammo quite consistently, or you need that extra support, then by all means use extended mag 2. Now, as for the other attachments that you can consider, I would then also maybe use a rear grip for better ADS to sprint to fire speeds if needed, or for flinch resistance, maybe use a stock. Now, as for the rest of the weapons in this video, they pretty much use the same sort of attachments, and when they don't, it's because you're changing the playstyle and the intention of when you're using it, i.e. as a sniper support weapon, or for a faster build and that sort of style. So then just consider this when you're making your weapons and choosing the attachments that you want to use, as it all caters to the sort of player you are and how you play in general and your sort of gameplay. And also for the TTKs, I'll summarize them all at the end for these weapons, just to give you an idea on the fastest killing weapons in the game right now. So as for the Grau and the Amax uses the exact same attachments as the Kilo, and as we've just gone over. As I mentioned, the preference is on the mag and whether you want to use extended mag 1 or 2 for the weight factor and the speed, and also whether you want to change the monolithic suppressor because you either don't have it or you just prefer the compensator in general, and that's pretty much the gist of it. The Amax, I find, is slightly more consistent with its TTK and the headshot multiplier. It feels like it just hits harder and kills quicker, so in my opinion, it's definitely what I'll be running once I unlock it in the battle pass. But from what I've experienced when I've picked it up and stuff off the floor, it is definitely a really consistent weapon all around. As for the Grau, I find this to be more of a hybrid medium range weapon. It's not something I would typically run with a sub, as it doesn't sort of have that beneficial range damage multiplier as you gain from the Amax or the Kilo, but it's definitely a great sniper support weapon in my opinion. As for the attachments, as you can see in the video, this weapon uses the monolithic suppressor, the vertical foregrip, the extended mag, which again is preference, the commando grip for the speed and the mobility of the build, and then of course the conversion kit that you have to make it from the SWAT to the Grau. Now, as I mentioned, you can put a sight on this weapon and test it for long range for yourself if that is what you want to do. Of course, I would then just take off the rear grip as the simple like-for-like swap in order to make that work, but in my opinion, you're going to be lacking that damage output at range in comparison to the likes of the Amax or the Kilo following the latest update. Now, of course, moving on to the submachine guns, as your sort of secondary weapon, you'll want to be using the C9, the KSV, and the Saug. I have seen some builds of players using the PPSH. I don't really know why. I don't personally think it works in this current meta. But as for the C9, you'll want to be using the following attachments. So the first one will be the compensator as the muzzle to provide you with better vertical recoil control. The second one will be the long barrel, giving you that better damage range output. The third one will be as the underbarrel, the Ranger foregrip, which will massively increase your speed and movement. Now, of course, if you do lack control in the recoil of this weapon, you can try the vertical instead. As for the fourth attachment, you'll want to be using the extended mag 1. Some players I have seen use extended mag 2, but bear in mind this will massively slow down your build. And then as for the fifth attachment, you'll want to be using the commando rear grip, as this will help you massively with ADS speeds and so on. Now, I'm still slightly torn between which sub I actually prefer, whether it be the C9 or the KSV. The KSV uses the exact same attachments, the compensator, the long barrel, the Ranger foregrip, the extended mag, again 1 or 2 out to preference, and the commando grip. But at times it feels that the KSV is better, and then I'll go back to the C9 and it'll feel like that's better. All round, I find them slightly different at times, so it's up to maybe preference all round. Regarding time to kill, I'll touch on that at the end of the video, but in my opinion, I don't think you necessarily need extended mag 2. I've seen a lot of people using that on both the submachine guns. In my personal experience, I don't need it. I don't find that I run out of ammo using that sub, unless of course you're using it at those more medium to long ranges, which therefore you probably should reconsider and try and switch to your AR anyways in those sort of scenarios. But I understand at times you have to shoot at more than one enemy, so you just have to maybe test the field and see which one you prefer and whether or not you actually need an extended mag 2. And then of course, as for the Saug, you want to be using the compensator, the Ranger foregrip, the extended mag 1 again or 2, the ergonomic rear grip, and the light stock. I haven't actually really tested the Saug yet, but I have picked up off the floor and it does feel like it melts at close range, so I would definitely consider trying to use this sub as a sort of third option if you don't necessarily get on with the first two, or if you just want to try out all the options to see which one you work best with. Now, moving on for the long range meta in this game, which seems to be where players are thriving right now due to the map size and how open certain areas are, you are going to massively benefit from having a sniper in your back pocket. As for the attachments for the HDR, you'll want to be using the Meta monolithic suppressor as the first attachment. As for the second attachment, you'll want to be using the Game Twist barrel as for the bullet velocity. As for the third attachment and your underbarrel, you'll want to be using the lightweight bipod. As for the fourth attachment, you'll want to be using the combat stock for all of the benefits, as it seems to be well overpowered, and I would definitely be using that. And then as for the fifth and final attachment, you'll want to be using the overpressured rounds for further bullet velocity. Now, that's pretty much it for all of the newly added weapons and the builds, and also the submachine guns to go alongside with them, including the absolute meta guns. Of course, there is a slightly better option to be using as a sort of hybrid or support weapon alongside a sniper, and that is the absolute fastest TTK weapon in the game right now, which is the AK-74. A lot of players aren't even using a sight on this, and as you can see in my build, I'm not. Some are using a sight, more of a reflex sight, because it's a more close range weapon, and as I mentioned, it's a support to a sniper setup. But for my build, I'm using a compensator, as I've mentioned, a Ranger foregrip for the speed boost, the extended mag 1, the commando rear grip, and the infiltrator stock. This is a super fast build and will help you massively when using it alongside a sniper, so I would definitely be using this weapon by all means as a #1 priority in this game, because I have been joked from this weapon time and time again so far, and I have just put it on all my classes now going forward. And then, of course, you can use the Carbon 88K. The build hasn't changed from previous Warzone metas. I'm not going to show it in this video, but it definitely can be used, and I've seen it all over around on the floor. I've picked it up at times. It seems just like normal. There's nothing new and flashy about it, in my opinion, but you can use that weapon by all means, especially if you haven't unlocked the HDR and you don't want to use any of the BO6 weapons. Now, that is pretty much it for all of the weapons and their attachments. As for the time to kills, here is a quick summary of all of the weapons that I've just gone through in this video. So starting with the C9 and the submachine guns, this actually has around a 650 millisecond time to kill, which isn't the fastest by any means. However, due to the clean iron sight of this weapon and the low recoil, it is a more consistent weapon to use and land shots on. So this is why it sort of makes it the most viable and one of the best submachine guns to be using right now. All round, it is a great weapon, and as I mentioned, a relatively fast TTK. Now, as for the KSV, this has a similar sort of time to kill as the previous 74U that was in the game back in the day, with a TTK of around 600 milliseconds at close range, more like up to 15 meters. It is slightly faster than the C9, but as I mentioned, it's harder to sort of land those headshots, but it can drop to about 550 to 575 milliseconds if you land headshots. It just seems to be slightly more inconsistent in the sense that at range and anything past 15 meters, you're going to see more of a disadvantage compared to the C9, which it maintains more of a competitive TTK up to 20 meters versus the KSV. Now, as for the Saug and following its buff, it actually has one of the fastest TTKs in the game, at around 590 milliseconds, up to sort of 10 to 15 meters. However, it is far more inaccurate, and also anything beyond 15 meters, it significantly drops off, unlike the KSV, and therefore, this is why I would then not consider this, but more of a close range if you're always in closer range areas, unlike Verdansk, where you tend to be in those more sort of medium range more often than not. This is where the Saug is slightly edged out, and this is why it's not also used more ahead than the C9 or the KSV. And as well as this, it's definitely worth mentioning the Kompakt. I have seen it used, and it's definitely on the floor around the map, and it has a really fast TTK of around sort of 500 to 550, but due to the recoil and its crazy sort of speeds, it just isn't that viable. And as I mentioned, past a certain range, it just drops off massively and therefore doesn't sort of have that advantage, whereas the KSV and the C9 have that sort of stability and recoil aspect that needs to be considered. But if you're talking about like-for-like comparisons, I would definitely say the sort of C9 and the KSV are the best, and then sort of the Saug and then the Kompakt as your submachine guns. Now, as for the ARs and their TTK of that closer range gunfights up to 50 meters, here is the following. The Amax is around 600 milliseconds TTK, the Grau is around 670, and the Kilo is around 650. So similar and not that far off than the actual subs themselves. However, at those longer ranges, those 50-meter pluses, so the damage will drop off and affect all of these weapons. However, the Amax itself, Slaughter maintains that edge at around 700 milliseconds versus the sort of 750 of the Grau and the Kilo. And also with its sort of headshot multiplier, it just seems to melt at all ranges. So as you can see, the Amax has a slight advantage than the ARs, and in general seems to be sort of the best weapon in the game. But also I have mentioned the AK-74 with an insane TTK, and probably the best meta weapon to be using right now due to the TTK, due to it being a really good sniper support weapon, and considering the map is so open and just excels when having a sniper in your hand, it would make sense that the AK probably becomes, if not already, the most used secondary weapon in the game, and just all round is a really fun gun to use. And of course, because it's a BO6 weapon, you should already have levels on this if you've been playing the game from the start. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That's the full overview, including TTKs of all of the newly added weapons, as well as current meta weapons from submachine guns, ARs, and snipers. If you have enjoyed the video, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as it massively helps me out. And if you have any tips or alterations to this video, please let me know down below. I'm Visionist Jin, and I'll see you in the next one.